Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, Brad, welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast, episode number 61.
I always feel so welcome because you always say, "Hi, Brett, welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast."
Did you just call it the Bloom Blot?
Shut up.
The Boom Bot Blot?
I did. It's been a long day.
The Boom Bots?
It is what it is.
It has been a long day, but nonetheless, we are here.
We are.
And we're going to record a podcast, and we've got a very interesting guest. But what is it you wanted to bring up to the listener today?
Heard a topic in a meeting that kind of, I don't know, it made me feel bad a little bit.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah,
Come on.
just for the individual.
Do you need to be held?
No.
Okay.
No, he did, I think.
Oh, shit.
But he was saying that he has a lot of, he feels bad it took him so long to get into the room. And he feels like he was way too late and he wasted his whole life before he got sober.
Yeah. So he regrets the past.
Yeah.
And I get it, but okay, realize that, but please don't dwell on that because it's not going to help you. It's not going to serve you.
Right.
You should focus on how happy you are that you were able to get in here when you did.
Yeah. And people aren't really looking as much at the time you've had in sobriety, but just your sobriety, and that you were able to do that, right?
Right, and whether you enter at 16 or 61, we all get here when we're supposed to get here.
Yeah,
you know.
And we all have a message of experience, strength, and hope. And someday somebody might be coming in that very situation and say, "Listen,
you're right," or somebody may be as old as whatever.
Yeah.
And be thinking, well, I'm too old now. I might as well just go out the rest of my days.
Don't think that.
Fucking torturing my body and my mind and my family and my employer and my fucking everything.
Yeah.
You know what? There's no time to get sober like the present.
That's right.
And sobriety is the present.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Oh, boy.
All right, anyway, we got a bang-up guest today. He is somebody who was given to us by Cindy F.
Yeah.
He's out in California. So we're going to be talking to him on our remote platform. So his audio is going to sound a little different than ours because we're in the studio and he's on a phone. But, we clean it up as best we can. And if you listen to it and it bugs you for the first couple minutes, give it some time. You'll start to not even notice it. Yeah. That's what happened to me when I listened to it.
Everything's going to be just fine.
So,
it's the message.
It's the message, not the mess.
Right.
So let's welcome, all the way from California, Kenny.
Ken from Chico.
And welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
Nice to be here.
Okay, so we are recording you. You are in California, right?
Chico, California.
Chico,
yes.
California. Great. And we're here in the studio, Brett and I. But can we start with your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is October 15th of 1980. I have 43 years of sobriety.
He didn't even give me a chance to do the math.
I know. Good, because we would screw that up. But. So can we go back to your first experience as a young person with the effects of alcohol and or drugs?
Like all the details. How did it make you feel?
Well, you know what? May I step back further, please?
Sure.
Yes, before you were born?
Yeah, well, a little later than that.
Okay.
But, it's like, the thing that I was as a kid was I was different then. And it was kind of like this feeling like I didn't fit in with people. There was this kind of like, adversarial kind of a disposition that I had with most of the people around me. And I just didn't feel comfortable and I didn't connect in. And, so being a part of what this world was is I had to tolerate it. But the reality is that I didn't want to be a part of what was going on around me. And I didn't like the people. I didn't trust them. And by the time I was 8 years old, I kind of felt like I was from another planet, and I was waiting for them to come get me and make the joke over with, and they didn't show up. So, I rolled around to, starting to drink at the age of 12.
Okay.
And I started when I found alcohol, I found this comfort and ease. Okay, and it just changed the whole world around me to be something that was tolerable, but it didn't make it so that I fit in with the rest of the world. In fact, I never did care about other people for the most part. And so but I started to chase after the drink, and I started to figure out what's the easiest, best way to get loaded. A lot of my participation in substance abuse had to do with other chemicals as well, but a lot of alcohol, whole lot of alcohol.
So why do you think you didn't like people or wanted anything to do with people? I'm just curious.
I don't know. It was, I don't really try to think.
Yeah,
I don't have an answer for that one. The best
that's
I
okay.
can.
Yeah.
All I know is that sure, I love my mom. I cared about some of my family members, but I mean, my experiences largely didn't really go well,
Gotcha.
and
So
it was my
you felt uncomfortable in your own skin, and
oh,
alcohol
definitely,
relieved you of that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and alcohol made it so I didn't care that the rest of the world, go screw the world. I didn't care about them. I didn't want to be a part of them, and I didn't care that weren't a part of me.
So you
You
caught
know,
that buzz at a young age, and then you chased it.
yeah.
And what was your time like between 12 and, say, your high school years as far as booze?
Well, what school I went to was kind of like on the same page there is that the people around me and everything like that, I didn't like them. For the most part, there was people that I hung around with and I associated with, but the reality was is that I was very uncomfortable with other people, and you put a couple of drinks in me, and the thing that I wanted to do was go find a place where I could go hide and drink some more.
Uh,
And and in between all that, I started to get into trouble, and I started to do things that were criminal in nature. And
Were there
was
consequences from your drinking and your behavior at that point when you were a kid?
oh yeah, oh yeah. I started running away from home. Started stealing cars. Started breaking into houses, and I get arrested. Got arrested a number of times for stealing cars, and the results of that was that they put me in juvenile hall, and they'd lock me up for a period of time, and finally they'd let me back out. You know, but none of this was dealing with and talking about, do you have a drinking problem or an alcohol or a drug problem?
yeah.
They never discussed that. They just said my behavior was unacceptable. No, don't no, learn your lesson and go home.
Juvenile
And
delinquent.
yeah, and my family, they were all drinkers. And
So
I
there
was
was never any drug or alcohol assessment in that program that you were put in, right?
no,
Nothing.
no,
And what was now, was there an effect from you being put into an institution with other criminal kids? Did you learn from them? Did it increase your knowledge or any of that kind of thing you hear
yeah,
about?
a little bit, but
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to become a master criminal or anything like that. They just I remember this one kid. He could steal a car within in 2 minutes. He was that good,
Yeah.
and
Now,
boy, he got
was this back when you used to be able to hotwire cars?
oh yeah,
Okay.
well it was a screwdriver back then, and
Yeah.
you could do a little bit of you could pop the lock off and then use the screwdriver to turn the car on.
Complete the current.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do
So
you make it through high school?
no,
Okay.
no. I dropped out. Well, I dropped out more than not by the time I was 14 years old, because I was in and out of the institutions and stuff. And by 14, a buddy of mine, we stole a car and drove it down, from Ventura County down to San Diego County, broke into his grandfather's house, stole an arsenal of weapons. I mean, we were loaded with
You were hooked up.
yeah, and and there was an all points bulletin out on us, armed and dangerous.
Oh.
So So they knew who did it, and they were and they were looking for us, and it was just only by God's grace they didn't catch us. And
Wow.
because it probably would have been a shootout at that point, but
Oh, Jesus.
you know,
Yeah.
so
So
that was crazy.
was alcohol easy to obtain for you?
More than not, it's kind of like back in the day. I don't know how much they do it nowadays. I've never had anybody approach me, but probably because I look too square.
Mm.
But I've never had anybody in this day and age ask me if I'd buy alcohol for them. But back in the day, as a teenager, oh, that was the thing to do. It's just like, hey, can you give me a couple 6 packs? And it's like, most
Sure.
kids, 21-year-old guy, all you had, was, we knew the characters back then. They had to have long hair and a beard. Okay.
Ah,
And that they were called hippies back then.
You're right.
right.
Yeah.
So we knew what we were looking for in terms of characters, and we just hit them up. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I know probably a lot of us say, hey, do you want to buy some weed too?
Yeah, right.
So you're on this path, and at the time, does it seem normal to you, or do you see yourself as being completely different from everyone else?
It's hard to answer a question that because what was normal for me, I knew there was something different, okay,
Sure.
and I knew that I didn't fit in, and I knew that I didn't connect with people and stuff like that. But what I was going to do about it and how I could deal with it, I finally got to a point where I realized that I had a drinking problem, and there was some serious problem there. But I'd lived in a family in an environment that everybody drank, and
Yeah, it was
so
normal.
yeah, it was more normal than not.
Yeah.
But that's that. I by the time I was in my 17 years old, I bounced in and out of the juvenile hall system. There've been certainly times and periods where you couldn't drink because there wasn't anything available in there.
Mm.
And but the last time I got arrested, I'd come to know this, because actually what happened is by the time I was 16 years old, they started putting me in boys camp. Okay.
Mm.
And the problem with boys camp is it doesn't have a fence. Okay. So it means that you can walk away
I see.
or run
And,
away.
and I'm guessing you
run
did.
away. Yeah, and run away with them chasing after you. That was the fun part. And not catch you. That was fun.
Right.
That was a victory.
I loved getting. It's like so. But it was just I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want to be a part of that because there was a bunch of idiots in there, and it was like the
Sure.
behavior thing. But as soon as I got to where I could be around people I knew to some degree, I was back into the drinking and the using and the and everything else, and eventually I get caught, and they'd throw me in juvenile hall, and I'd stay there for a few months, and they finally say, okay, we're putting you back in boys camp now. You behave this time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was.
And I bet you love structure and a lot of directions.
Yeah, well, back then, I couldn't stand. Well, actually, I do pretty good when I was locked up. When they put the bars on me as far as the kid goes, I didn't have the alcohol. And a lot of us, talked about, when they didn't have the drink in them, they acted pretty smart.
Yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde thing.
And I had a good head on my shoulders and still do.
Yeah.
But so after the third time of us, walking away from this boys camp, now it was pretty clear that I was going to go to what they called CYA, and it was, youth prison is what it was.
Okay.
And they did away with it, some 20 years ago, I think. And I'm 66 now, so for the people who need a reference. I had met this guy while I was out there, and I started hanging out with him, and his dad had some serious political connections. I mean, really, really powerful ones. And so that last time that I went through there, their solution to me was to send me up to live with my father up in Washington State. So I got to go up there to be with my dad, and the thing that was about my dad is that he, first of all, he was a Green Beret.
Mm.
And so he was, and also he was a world famous skydiver. Have you ever heard of the Golden Knights,
I
U.S. Army
haven't.
parachute team?
Yeah, I think I did. Are they still around?
Yes, they're
Yeah,
trying. They're talking up this. Yeah,
I I went to an air show and they had a
yes,
skydiving team, and that might have been them.
it was probably them. There, and my father was one of the founding members.
Oh, no
Wow,
kidding.
cool.
So he was all about being the man's man, and he was definitely a tough man, and
I would imagine so.
he went through 2 tours of Vietnam, and so he had all the accolades and the merits and everything else, and he got me up there, and first thing he did was he threw a bag of weed on the table and he says, "Can you roll a joint?"
Wow.
He,
Hi, son.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Want to
exactly.
get hi, son? Yeah.
Yeah. So and definitely, and I was a good joint roller, and I became the joint
Nice.
And how old
roller.
are you at this point?
17 going on closer to 18.
Okay.
And
And
I
do
was working.
you, if you
But,
look back on it, do you see the disease progressing in yourself?
oh yeah. Well,
Okay.
so did my dad. Dad's a normie, okay,
Hmm.
and he saw it, and it's like when he started partying with me, I became a nut. I mean, I was an insane drunk. Don't get me, there's no question about it. As soon as I get enough alcohol in me, there is no filter on my mouth. I'll say anything and everything.
Uh-huh.
And so he taught finally after about 6 months of that, he says, I don't want you ever, I don't want you drinking about me. Don't you dare. I'll beat your ass if you
Well,
do.
right.
And he did too. And but so and he tried his best to explain to me about what it was like to drink like quote a gentleman. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he says, look, he says, all you got to do is just drink enough alcohol to get this good buzz going on there. And then all you have to do at that point is drink just an ounce of alcohol every hour, and you'll keep buzzed at that level, and you'll have a good time. And
Wow, had it right down to the science.
I says, you are out of your mind. That is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, not an ounce by the time, that's for
Con-
yeah,
sure.
it's like that ounce is going to be 10 ounces if I can. I tell people, when I share, I say, I suffer from this affliction I call the 6 M's. It's me, more.
6 M's?
Yes, me, more.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
Yes, I've
And
heard that before.
it is all about me, and it's all about more.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I want to get, and if it doesn't apply to those two situations there, for the most part, I really don't have no time and place for you.
Yeah.
So you move up to the Great Northwest.
Yeah, go
Your
see
drinking continues. You start smoking dope. Do you get in more trouble?
Yeah, I got in fair share of trouble, but but in that environment there, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I didn't have to do anything in order to get. I was working for my dad,
Mm.
so we were fixing a boat and preparing it for water, and so I got enough money every week to go out there and on the weekends and just rip roar it, and then come up on Monday and do it again. And that managed to survive. I managed to handle that for a while before things with my dad got
Yeah.
really crappy. And he had his own issues, and
Mhm.
we were we'd fight and everything like that. And but finally, I got tired of that, and I got tired of any responsibilities, and I decided I'd just hitchhike around the country.
Oh, wow.
And I was going from Washington State all the way down as far as Texas, and then back. And it was just a back and forth trip. And if I had my thumb out, headed south, I was going to see my brother, who was at one point in the army down in Texas. And if I was coming back north, I would be coming from seeing my brother, who was in Texas. And most people would pick up at this kid. I was 19 at that time,
Mm.
and they'd look at me, baby faced and everything, and I'd say, can you spare a couple of dollars for a hamburger?
Yep.
and never went for a hamburger, but I asked for it,
Mm.
and that's more often than not, I got a lot of money and I got plenty drunk just about every night.
Yeah, you were cunning.
And in a lot of occasions, it would be somebody I'd getting into the car and they'd be handing me as a beers as I got in,
Yeah.
you know. And it put me in some pretty dangerous spots. I mean, when I look back on it and I hear about the stories about some of the people that were,
Yeah.
some of the people that were getting picked up and stuff like that, and guys on death row because they were killing guys like me at that time.
Sure.
But I didn't care. And then the thing
How
about that was I isolated myself from the whole world in that way.
how long did you live like that?
Oh, it was about 10 months or so, right around that. Just
Okay.
back and forth drifting. I stop and see my mother on occasions, who lived in Los Angeles. But I didn't want any responsibility. I didn't want accountability in my life at all.
Just a
I didn't
drifter.
want anybody to tell me what to do or where to go. I didn't want the burden of renting a home because that costs money, or owning a car. That too is not. I don't want to pay for gas. I don't want to pay all. I want to buy alcohol with any money I get.
Mm.
And sleeping under a bridge was plenty good enough for me.
Okay. So did something change?
Yes. I wound up taking somebody's life.
Okay.
And in this insanity of my disease, I went into a situation and I did something that I just,
Hmm.
I'd been telling myself along, at least you haven't taken anybody's life. At least you haven't done
Yep.
that. At
Things
least
are
you haven't done
crazy,
it.
but you haven't gone there.
Yeah, yeah. And what this program, talks about is the yets, and you're eligible too.
I heard you
And
say that, and I've never heard that. I listened to one of
really,
your speaker tape things and one of your speeches, and I like that. That
yeah.
yet. That's really cool. Yeah.
Well, I always also say that, I'm one drink away from a felony too.
Yeah.
And I got to remind myself of that fact is that, this disease it's an insanity that I suffer from. And then, and I said the 6 M's, but it's a terminal disease I got too. And that
Hmm.
insanity of the brain is like, I am so obsessed with me, myself, and I, and what I want in this world, which is more alcohol, that, I'll take it to my death. And that's just the reality of where I'm at and the way I see the world.
Yeah, and your insanity when you drank really is kind of extreme, isn't it?
Uh, Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's like, I think a lot of it had to do with this. And one of the things I'll back up a little bit is
Hmm.
that as a kid, there was things done to me as a kid that were very traumatic, and I
Okay.
don't wish it on anybody. It was
Yeah.
sexual and it was physical.
Yeah.
I was brutalized, and I don't wish that on anybody. And it was horrific. And
Yeah.
so I definitely have had this. I've heard it said about, it's like this super ego, covering over this insecurity that's beyond belief.
Trauma
I've
and
heard it,
fear.
yeah, I've heard it described as me seeing myself as a pile of crap,
Hmm.
but wanting the whole world to circle around me.
Yep.
And that's pretty insane. And a lot of people, I think a lot of alcoholics get there, but it takes a lot more time. But I mean, I dove right into it and I got
Yeah.
there.
So this incident happens and you're held accountable?
I
You're
stood on
arrested?
I stood on a freeway overpass the night after the crime, looking over the side of the bridge and asking myself, but you finally did that. It's like, what do you got to live for? Nobody cares about you. Nobody wants you around them. You're just nothing but trouble. So
Hmm.
why don't you just jump over that side of the bridge and just deal with it? And
Hmm.
then it's like there was a Bible scripture that was bouncing around in my head, eye for an eye.
Mm.
But I was also talking to this God of my misunderstanding, because I didn't really know this God. But and I was asking for mercy.
Hmm.
And what I know about mercy is that it's getting something I don't deserve.
Hmm.
Okay. And I knew that I deserved to die. I knew that it was I had done just horrible things, and so it's time for me to go out. But after I'd been up there about 2 hours standing on this bridge, I walked down from it, and I called the police and I turned myself in when I went
Mm.
up in the car.
Wow.
And it was like, and I've seen God in my life ever since.
Yeah.
So yeah, of sorts, I got arrested, but
Yeah.
On your accord.
as I say, I was rescued.
So what happens as a result of this whole thing?
I wound up in the California prison system serving a life sentence.
Mm.
And they sent me to this one particular prison. I was 19 coming in, 20 by the time I hit the prison system. And they back in that day and age, they had certain things that they would do, and they didn't want to send me to some insanely difficult, hardcore prison either.
Sure, you're
So
20.
and they sent me. So they sent me to this one prison in Vacaville, and I started to do my time there, and I was staying away from the alcohol for kind of sort of not looking for it, but I was using other things, and I was
Yeah.
smoking a lot of weed, getting loaded, and I was starting to see that everything I was doing with alcohol, I was doing with the weed, but the weed was doing it because, as I said, I had this insanity in my brain that I was not deserving of anything. I was a useless piece of crap, and and the weed was kind of like shutting that off more than not.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the last drink that I took, and it was while I was incarcerated, and I remember seeing a bunch of guys standing down at the end of this hallway, in the unit that I was living in, and they all had cups in their hands, and I knew it was in the cups, and I went down there, and one of the guy hands me his cup, and I take a big swallow of this alcohol. Okay. And this guy could cook some good prison wine. I mean,
Yeah.
it had a kick. It had a good kick to it, and it had a good flavor. It kind of was like a pilsner, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And I mean, it tasted, and the compulsion to drink welled up in me like a lion. And I said to myself, yeah, I want to get good and drunk.
Yep.
And but as quick as that came up, there came over me this moment of clarity, I call it. And what I see it as is this God of my still misunderstanding then was tapping me on the shoulder, and asking me in a very, very gentle way, do you really want to do what you're about to do? Because like I said,
yeah.
yeah, I have no filter, and you don't want to have a filter. You need a filter in prison. And because there was, and I mean, I was a belligerent drunk, and that message that came through, and it was almost a vision, but it was and it wasn't, and it says, you drink and you start drinking in prison, you're either going to wind up dead or on death row.
Yeah.
We talk
because
about
now you're all around. You said you didn't care for people, had nothing to do with them, and now you're in four walls with them, all in close proximity.
So is the availability of alcohol and drugs pretty plentiful in prison?
Oh yeah. It's like anybody listening to this who thinks that that we're isolated from anything like that. Oh, you have no clue. It's like it is
very crafty people.
Oh yeah. Well, they I remember, there was this one guy who, I knew real good later, many years later. He talks about the fact that they'd bust him for his alcohol in the morning, and by that evening he'd already have another batch set up and ready, cooking. It was like, so it was a given, it was easy enough to do. And
so you're serving a life sentence. Do you have a possibility of a way out?
I do. Yeah. So, and it was a 7 to life, and and it was like, the and I'll get to that if you don't mind.
Whatever you were.
Yeah, but so we talk about in this program about the end results of our drinking is death, insanity, or prison. And I kind of scratched a couple off the list already.
Yeah.
So it was like there wasn't a lot of things here. And excuse me while I pop something to drink here.
Sure. It's a non-alcoholic beverage for the listeners.
Yes. It's root beer.
It's an A&W root beer.
Interesting fact. We have an actual A&W.
I hope I didn't trigger anybody.
No.
No.
We have an actual A&W restaurant here.
Is that right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can drive in and
Yeah.
get your
Yeah.
AMW.
They come
Well,
out to
they're,
you.
they're on the West Coast too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And I was,
So you're in prison and you have this moment of
yeah,
clarity where you have a choice, and the choice you
yeah,
make is to put the drink down.
yeah. I never took another drink, but I was using other things.
Okay.
Okay. And I was smoking plenty of weed because then it was like that. Like I said, that insanity in my brain was bad, and that it's like we talk about this as untreated alcoholism. There's two treatments for alcoholism, as I know it. One of them is alcohol, and the other one is the program in sobriety.
Mhm.
And the alcohol and the substance abuse was doing something, because I was insane, and but so I was going on there, and I was actually studying. I was good. I was a good student at first. Within the first 3 months of my incarceration, I'd already gotten a GED.
Wow.
After dropping out at the age of 14, I
Yep.
didn't study, and three
You
months
went to
later,
work.
3 months of that, and I had a GED, and I was studying electronics. I was in an electronics class at that time. I was fixing TVs when they had vacuum tubes in them.
Huh.
So I don't know. Maybe Brett doesn't
Oh,
know what
cool.
that is, Mark. Yeah.
I
Uh,
definitely do.
When
Yeah.
I was a kid, if your TV went on the fritz, the guy would
Yeah.
come to your house
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
whole thing of tubes, and he'd
Uh-huh.
find the right tube for you and pop it in, and your TV would work.
I used to, I'm a singer, and I used to sing with an older guy. He was
Right.
way older, and he was the TV doctor in Syracuse.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
Phil
yeah.
Lambrinos.
Yes.
Yeah, I sang with
The
him.
TV
So
diet.
I do
We
know.
make house calls.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I do know what that is.
Or you go down to the local drugstore, and they'd have these tube testers, and you can check
Yeah.
out your tubes.
I remember him. I always looked at him and I was baffled.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
I
so
get that. Yeah, when I get
So
back,
clearly you've got some brains.
well, I think so. And
Yeah.
so
I used
you're
to-
finding something in there to improve yourself at least, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
exercise your mind. And you're not drinking, but you're still doing smoking pot, any other drugs involved?
Yeah, and more of my day was being consumed as I was in class. Then what am I going to do to get loaded tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking in my head, it's like, it's like, and then also there was more and more of my thinking was about, a drink would really scratch this itch.
Yeah, it always
Really
comes back.
good, and it was, and it's that's that insanity. And
Did they have meetings in the
was gonna say,
place you were? They had AA meetings?
allow me to continue.
Yes.
And I, so I went and, at about a year incarceration, they take you, being a life sentence, being a lifer,
Mhm.
they take you up in front of a parole board recommendation hearing. Okay. And the commissioner came in first, he looked over my central file, and then he calls me in, and he comes, and I sit down, and and he's looking over things, and he's going to recommend what I should be doing. Okay. And he says, you're doing pretty good. And I hadn't got caught, and so it's like, I was like, yeah, you don't know what I'm doing, but glad
Yeah.
you think so, and he says, but you're missing one thing. And I said to him, AA, and he says, yeah. I says,
Yeah.
well, okay. But I didn't know, I knew there was AA meetings, but my understanding of AA at that point in time came from a neighborhood kid when I was, young teenager. He got busted for a DUI. They sent him to, AA, as part of the sentencing.
Mhm.
And, and his report back was it was nothing more than a country club without a bar.
Oh, yeah, it was a social
And
club.
they laughed it up. He said they were funny people, but he really didn't see any point in all of that other than just hanging out and making fun, laughing and everything. And they, so I didn't know what AA was about. I just thought, well, I don't need this. What's the point of it? It's like if I need, I need a good joke, I'll tell one myself. But I remember saying, okay, I'll give it a try. And and I remember before I went into that meeting, I said to myself, here I am doing a life sentence inside of this, and all the circumstances and everything that I'm facing, and I might as well, so I might as well listen in an open and honest way to what they're talking about. Give them a chance, and give them an honest try. And and I went into that board. In the state of California, the people that bring in the meetings are called hospitals and institution, H&I. They got to have 6 years of sobriety or 5 years of sobriety, excuse me. And and so they brought in a message of hope to me. Mm-hmm. And they told me, and what they started to tell, they tell the story like we're suggested that we do, and it was what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And what it was like that they were talking about, I'm sitting there and saying, "Dang, that's how I did it." Mm-hmm. And it's like they were burning their lives to the ground in so many, crazy and insane ways, just like I did. And I'm looking at him and says, "Well, dang, it took you a long time to do what I did in a couple of years." It's like it really you got your story, got your progress all screwed up there. But but the message that they gave me is that they had burned their lives to the ground. Business gone, relationships, marriages, we had a few ex-cons coming in too. Yeah. And, and then they said about coming into the program, finding sobriety, and, crawling into the meetings and, and the bottoms that they'd hit, had gotten to the place where they were willing to open up and listen, kind of like what I was at. And they said, they started to do the work. They started to read the books in the AA literature, the big book, the 12 and 12, as Bill sees it, Daily Reflection, all these other ones. And as a result of that, their lives started to change, and one of the things they didn't say to me, which I'm very grateful for, is that I'd have to wait until I got out in order to do what they were doing. They told me, if you do what we do, you'll get what we get. And the H&I in Northern California pays for all the AA literature going in. We have these what they call pink cans that go on all the meetings around here. And we donate the pink cans collect about $250,000 every year for literature. Wow. And so I had all the material, and I started to study it, and I started to break it out. But it's like I would underline it, and I would highlight, and underline, highlight, and go through and through and through this stuff, and it started to work.
Did you have a sponsor or anything at that point?
No, but I was, no, I didn't really like the guy, the other convicts. I knew them inside of the rooms and what they were doing outside. Sure. Their program wasn't good. But I did have psychiatric treatment. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I was working with a psychologist at that time, a psychiatrist. He was a psychiatrist, and he, old school doctor. He had been 30 years in the prison system at the time that he started to work with me. And so I was doing a whole lot. And when I started to work the program, and what we talk about this in the material too, is that I started to find that if I want this man to help me, I got to get honest. Yeah, I got to get real with him and tell him the lowdown on what it was that happened with my life and the things that went on. And I went and I actually did my fifth step with this guy too, and and believe me, he said, he held up this notebook and he says, anything I write in this notebook, I got to give to the state. Yeah. So he took the notebook and he set it down to the side and he says, now go ahead and talk. And I did my program with this man in a very clear way. That didn't mean I was like H&I was coming in on a weekly basis, so I was bouncing a whole lot of stuff. And it was like they were just like, yes, and this and that, and and they were pointing me in directions and giving me the feedback as far as how the program works and sobriety works as well.
Mm-hmm. How many meetings did they have in there a week?
One a week.
One a week, okay.
Yeah. I started trying my best to get other things going, including the 12-step study, and we got a couple more things going on while I was there. So I started to find that this program was giving me, hope. It was giving me, when I first looked at those steps and I started to, read them over, I says, what does that have to do with me having a sober life? Why do I got to do this? Because what I saw really didn't connect up with, the reality of it. But the other thing that I was looking at was the results that the H&I was giving, and the way that their lives had unfolded as a result of working those steps. So
Sure.
I trusted them. I believe that what they said, it was like, what you get, you want what we got, you do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I trusted them.
Yeah.
And it worked. It started to shift my mind around. We talk about in the material about this radical shift that comes about.
Yep.
Where we see the world one way at one point, then all of a sudden it's a 180 degrees shift, and we're seeing the world from an entirely different viewpoint.
Sure.
And I remember, coming around to my first year of sobriety. And I'm talking to this doctor that I've been, working with and dealing with and everything like that. I'm telling him about my first year sober. And he says to me, I remember you when you first came in, because he'd been working with me about 6 months before I'd gotten serious. He said, I didn't think you had a chance. I thought you were a lost cause. You were one situation from going down the tubes, and you were going to be buried. You were not going to come out of that.
Yeah.
And like I said, he was old school. He knew what he was looking at. He says, but now you got it. And he says, I don't know what that it is, but you got it.
Yeah.
And I knew what it was. It was doing the work and applying these principles to my life in a meaningful way.
So did you have what you would call psychic change as
Yes.
a result of things that went on there? And how does this affect your experience in incarceration?
Well, I learned how to live life on life's terms.
Mm.
But did I mention to you that prison sucks?
I've heard that before.
Yeah. It's not a happy place. You got a lot of untreated alcoholism and other substances.
Mental
have
health.
bitter, angry individuals. And and I had to learn how to live in that kind of environment with those kinds of people.
Tolerance. Oh.
Living my world with respect and courtesy for the next human being, even if they're just, complete,
Yeah.
but I found that I had purpose, meaning, purpose, and direction. And, I got back to my schoolwork and, did a good job, learned, got good grades and everything like that, and learned how to pick things up on that. But I was living in a world that was pretty insane. Yeah. And by the way, one of my, co-inmates was Charles Manson.
Charlie.
So, yeah, Charles.
Chuck.
Did you have any interaction with him?
Oh yeah, we had a few conversations. And he was cuckoo.
Yeah, from what I understand,
his design for living was a little bit different.
From what I understand, he's a very small guy.
Yeah.
Very crazy, egotistical, and kind of just far out, liked freaking people out.
Yeah.
Was that your experience?
Yes, and and I remember a couple of people that got caught up in his insanity, and it's like, they say, "Oh man, I'll kill for him. I'll kill for him."
Yeah, charismatic.
How the fuck do people do that?
Well,
how do people pull that off?
Well, you're going to have to ask my wife about being in a cult, and that's the next one you interview.
Okay.
Yes. To be continued.
So, yes, to be continued.
Just to sum it up here. So you're in this place and you're doing well. You're sober. You're navigating a very strange and violent environment with a lot of crazy people.
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead.
You get to a point where you get into a rhythm. Okay. Most people, they're looking for victims, and I don't present myself as that. And to qualify all that, I got in 2 fist fights the entire time I was down, and both of them were before I got sober. Okay, but you learn how to walk and maneuver and navigate in this kind of environment. And there's enough people, and what the program taught me was, and they said to me very clearly, is to stick with the winners. And there's enough people doing doing some good work inside of the prison system that you don't have to hang out with a bunch of idiots and co-sign them. You know, I don't call myself a convict because convict by definition, I people call me out because I'm a convict, and I says, well, where do you put convict on a resume? And it doesn't fit. So I never did ascribe to that, but I learned how to walk in a good way. And and I started to, and when you're not chasing after drugs and alcohol while you're in prison, you can accomplish a whole lot. So I was in school, I was doing studies, I was doing all the things like that. By 1993, I was transferred over to San Quentin State Prison. But I got to back it up here. I got to tell you this one too. Just before, it was a couple of years before '93, and I had just about 12 years of prison. I was incarcerated for about 12 years. I had 10 years of sobriety, and by definition, I was a model prisoner.
Yeah.
And and I was going in there for I think it was my fourth parole board hearing, and I dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's, but I also looked at the world I was at in that time and place. And you remember Michael Dukakis running for office and the Willie Horton incident? So I looked at that and I said, oh, and the tough on crime and everything like that. I said, well, I got nothing coming. I really don't believe I'll get anything out of this hearing. But I went in there as representing the best person I could be, as this program taught me to do. And so, the last person to speak at this particular thing was the prosecuting attorney, and it was his job to put me in prison for the rest of my life.
Of course.
And he had some of his comments coming out was like, he should never get out and everything like that. But after I'd done my, spoke my piece and everything like that, it came his turn. He says, well, he's done the best performance I've ever seen, and he deserves to go home.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't argue with him. Okay.
Yeah, imagine not.
I didn't want to, but we went out and they recessed the hearing while they made their decision. I went out there and we shook hands and we talked a little bit. He became a friend of mine after that point of sorts. We're not buddies now, but I thanked him for what he did.
And you recognized it.
Yeah, and I went back into the boardroom, and they found me suitable. And I said, wow, there was all this stuff that was going on there. And so I go back to my AA group and I start telling them, man, you do the right thing, you get the right results. And you just got to hang in there, and sobriety works and the AA program works and blah, blah, blah. And I was getting all these plans, and H&I was telling me, we're going to take you to this meeting, you can do that, and you can go here. I had a wife, I had all these things that were going on there. And I thought, my world is getting ready to go down, into this glorious path of, of living a life that was, of sobriety and happiness. And I was in there, and about 3 months into this, I get called into this room, and they have this. It was a committee, as they called it. And he said that parole date you had, you don't have it anymore. You're not going home.
Oh shit.
And I knew at that point that it was going to be a long time before I got out. And so I remember coming back to my AA group and talking to him. And I told him, I says, right now I can tell you is that my head is just pounding with grief, and
so
my
deflating.
World, yeah. Oh, it just destroyed me as far as my hope and everything else. And I said I had to take a honest look at, do I really want to do what I'm about to do as far as time sober?
Yeah.
Because this prison sucks.
Yep. Did they ever tell you why?
Well, it was everybody. It wasn't just me. Okay. There was, and there was, I got interviewed by this reporter, along later, and she says, oh, you're one of them. And it was a whole thing where they ripped the dates out of everybody. And, and whether they're right or wrong on it, and the just or unjust and everything like that, I don't try and describe that as how it was supposed to be. I just know that what it affected me like.
Sure.
And whether it was fair or not is not for me to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
But I told them, I told that meeting, I says, But I had to weigh it all out, and I said to myself, this sobriety that I've been given is the quality of life I've gotten is worth living in this way. And I got doubled down on my sobriety, and I got even more involved in AA, got more involved in the things that I was supposed to be doing, and and then eventually they shipped me over to San Quentin State Prison,
which is a 180 compared to how you used to live.
Oh yeah, well, my
used to
attitude
isolate,
about life,
go away, travel. Now you're actually digging it even more.
Yeah, what was the idea with that?
Yeah.
The bottom line on it is that, if I must live, how will I do it?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the quality of life that AA has given me was worth doing, no matter the circumstances.
It was attractive.
And the idea is that, when it comes down to is willing to go to any length, as I see it. And that willingness, and I think that trips a lot of people up, is that they set a bar, and that bar doesn't get, if that bar gets tripped, they say, well,
forget it.
I'm not going to deal with that one. I'm going to go drink.
That's right.
And what I learned in this program is that if it's, you no matter what, you don't drink. And walking through that situation there, it was not easy at all. And believe me, I had to, and it went on as many different circumstances.
Had to have tremendous support for that.
Well, I had enough, and I had enough of a thing. I was in therapy still. I was working with another psychiatrist, and those things help. But I had the program as my backbone, and a faith in a God of my understanding. Because I've been studying, one of the things that happened when I first started making meetings in the first place, we stored all our material over in this site where this Christian group was. And so I just started going to that as well. And I found a faith of my understanding.
Wow.
And so, this God of my understanding, and God, and I saw God in my life in some very real ways. And I saw some miracles happen as a result of that too.
How did things change for you once you were shipped over to San Quentin, as far as your program and all that stuff? They had AA there, obviously, right?
Oh yeah.
And were you able to just join right in with that group?
Oh yeah. Well, I was actually, I was, told by H&I that was going to meetings at where I was at, was that, well, I'll see you when you get over there, because I go to meetings there too.
Mm-hmm.
And in San Quentin, by the way, is where H&I started in California, in the world, and in any prison it started. Well, actually, I hear something about there was a meeting going on in Texas or something like that at one point.
Okay.
But when the program, as it stands inside of the prison system, they brought it into San Quentin first, and they call it hospitals and institutions, and where it spread out from there for the most part. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. They started H&I as a result of two different groups going to bring a meeting into the prison, and in order to settle who got to bring the meeting in, they got into a fist fight.
No shit.
Yeah. Hey, good old AA work,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So in order to avoid those conflicts in the future, they set up this group H&I, and they coordinated and they organized it and made it so that everybody knew who was going and when.
Ken, we have a lot more of your story to go.
Yeah.
And we're at the probably about 55-minute mark. Would it be okay with you if we put a pin in it for this episode and carry you on to a second episode?
Yeah.
Would that be okay with you? All right. Well,
we got a lot more to cover. I have a feeling.
We do. So let's end this episode here, and we'll pick it up at the next episode. And in the next episode, I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
I'm Ken.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.